All right, so I want to talk a little bit about rumination if you're on the spectrum, because chances are, if you're watching this and you're autistic, you have ruminated. I mean, everyone has, but it's almost obsessive for a lot of autistic people, and there's good reason for it, but what is rumination? Basically, you're just so preoccupied with the past or negative aspects of your life that you play those movies in your head over and over again. Over and over again. I know for a fact in my case, I've had certain bad things happen to me. Friends treat me in ways that just weren't friendly. Um, let's just stop there. Just not great. It's like just saying it makes me want to ruminate over all the things that happened. But yeah, in my case, I can say that the rumination itself almost became more destructive than the destructive things that happened in the first place. Me just obsessing over the thing over and over and over again cost me a lot more than what originally happened. And it's crazy. Like, why do that so much? Well, research has shown that rumination is actually addictive, and many things you get addicted to aren't good for you. Basically everything, honestly. You can get addicted to studying too much. I certainly did, and I can say that certain negative aspects have arisen in my life because of that. But besides the point, rumination is addictive, and many people on the spectrum experience it, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Because, well, I'm not going to justify this because I think it's pretty much granted. I mean, if you're autistic, you probably will think the same thing as me here. Autistic people get the short end of the stick. We don't. The society is not made for people like us. And, well, there's a lot of stress that compiles because of this. And a lot of it's just not fair. And so we get dealt more stuff to ruminate about, basically. And the fact of the matter is, when you're autistic, you tend to be a lot more repetitive. So I think this is a recipe for disaster. On top of usually having a strong sense of justice. Hey, it's not fair that you got to do this and then did this to me, or I treated you this way, but then you turned around and treated me like this. We tend to take that to heart, that this isn't fair. Why is it that it gets to work out this way? Why this? Why that? And before you know it, you're just repeating these movies in your head to the point where you might even want to stop. You might be conscious of them and not want to think about them for just a little bit, and then they crop back up. I could say during the worst of my times with ruminating, it was literally like, I'm done thinking about this. 30 seconds later, I'm back into a thought. And it's just so hard to shake. I mean, waking up in the middle of the night and the first thing that comes to your mind is one of these ruminatory thoughts. It just wears you out, and it's almost just a symptom of autism in a lot of ways due to those conditions and traits that I just described. But honestly, I think there's a little bit more to it. So, strong sense of justice, I think that does something. Not being treated fairly, that does something. And being repetitive, that does something. But I also mentioned that we are in a society that wasn't made for people like us. Oftentimes what that means is your perspective is very different than other people's, and people overlook it. So I'm sure if you're autistic, you could think of a few times where it was obvious that this was not a fair treatment of whoever you are. Certainly for myself, there's certain times where I'm just like, am I the one taking crazy pills here? Like, am I really in the wrong here? Did I do something wrong here? I mean, I paid for the hotel room and did this, that, like actually objectively beneficial things to the other party, and they turn around and just treat you like you're less of a person. I think this is the infantilization that we usually receive. Whether the person knows we're autistic or not, it seems to kind of go in that direction, but oftentimes people just don't see us, I think, as a fully fledged human being, and they discount our perspectives. They just discount them. You don't know what happened. You're just naive, and it's like, let's ruminate a little bit. I just got my food poured on my lap because you didn't let me just eat it. Real story I'm telling right now, really quick. Had a friend walk up, mess with me, pour my poured my food on my lap on accident. He just responded with, if he had his dog here, you could have his dog lick the food off my lap. I didn't get mad at this. It was a little annoying, but I didn't really do much. 30 seconds later, I get up. He's standing there. His foot's on a skateboard. I put my foot on his skateboard next to his, and my shoe touches his shoe. He gets mad at me. He just like makes his face. Yeah, you know, some people need the shit beat out of them to learn their place. I'm just like, I touched my shoe with your shoe, and that's how you respond after dumping my food on my lap. It just, I don't see him treating other people this way. It just like, it can really just make me feel like this is not fair. You're just being treated this way because you're autistic. He doesn't even know it, know it consciously, but he knows it on some level, and that's why I felt like I would get treatment like that. Things like this have happened so much to me where it just feels unbalanced, unfair, and I'm almost there convincing myself of that inequality because all the time people seem to overlook when something affects me and only focus on how they're affected. And it's just like, am I just like that? Am I the same? Where I'm just looking at this skewed version of reality and it isn't the way that I'm literally seeing it. It seems so concrete to me that it seems real, but it just seems like no one else is seeing it, so what the heck? Basically, I think our perspectives are overlooked a lot. And so when something bad happens to us, not only do people not care, it leaves us feeling a little bit disoriented. Because it's like, but didn't that happen that way? Didn't it do that? Wasn't that occurring? And it's not just the obsessive thoughts. It's not just the strong sense of justice. It's not that something wrong happened. It's almost like we need to convince ourselves that we're seeing reality sometimes. At least that's how I feel about myself. I've just needed to justify myself and my perspective to so many people, and usually I don't, but I've always felt that way. And I think that to some degree this is why we ruminate. It's like, how did that happen? Why did that happen that way? We just review. So, I found a lot of progress in just accepting my perspective. I mean, I'm the type of person to question why I'm feeling certain things, and if I am or am not in the right, I think it's fair we all do that. But when somebody dumps food on your lap and then gets mad at you for touching your shoe to their shoe, there's nothing else to think about. They're just being a jerk. They're just being a jerk, and I'm entitled to not really want to be around them. So it's easier to just, I find I ruminate a lot less once I started accepting my perspective. I stopped needing it to justify it to myself, to other people, stuff like that. So I think that to some degree a component of rumination is the fact that we don't really fit into society so well and our perspectives overlook so much that we need to convince ourselves that what we saw was actually in fact true, which is a normal human response. A normal human response, not an autistic thing. That's a normal human thing. So, it's not fun, and the best thing to do with rumination is stop, but believe me, I know from experience, it's easier said than done. This is one thing, again, that helped me a lot. It's just getting more comfortable with the fact that my perspective is valid in a lot of ways. And I'll just say it, because this is part of it. I think I see reality a lot more for what it is than a lot of neurotypicals. They are very emotionally driven and have a ton of biases they're not aware of. Subconsciously, something unfair is going on there. They don't see it consciously, but subconsciously something's going on there where they can dump food on my lap and I can't touch my shoe to their shoe. Not fair. It isn't. But that's the world we live in. And it's easy to get wrapped up with inequality, but really the rumination just makes it worse. It just makes it worse. there's a processing period, and there's probably a healthy amount of rumination when something unfair happens, but I find that a lot of autistic people overdo it, myself included. So, just, I've been telling myself, I'm not looking at you by how similar you are to myself. Sorry, my email. I'm looking at what you're doing. And I think I'm better at that than a lot of neurotypicals. So, getting some confidence, I guess, has helped. That's really what it is. Having some confidence in your perspective and not needing to justify it to yourself all the time. So, yeah. It's just like, there's a sweet spot. You can question yourself to a level, but after doing it for so long and beating a dead horse, what's the point anymore? Just accept what you saw, how you feel. Take it as valid, and maybe it will decrease the need to want to ruminate.